So it's been really interesting to try to figure out how do you have a boundary where you stay true to yourself and you're not changing to be accepted by other people,
Yeah.
but also make space to be better.
This is TJ with the Show Me Better in Real Life podcast. Um, so I have got a super special guest, one of my very, very best friends, Heather Parady. It'd be super easy for us to make this about all the things that she has accomplished and all the things. Uh, but today we're going to talk about like bettering or being better in relationships. And so before we jump into all that, Heather, how are you doing today?
I'm good, but I have a confession for you.
What's that?
I didn't look at any of the questions you sent me before.
Totally okay. That's okay.
But I don't like looking at questions before because then I feel like I get too much in my head and then I script it and I don't feel like that. So this is raw and real.
No, I get that. So I also have a confession.
Oh God, you didn't write it. You chat GPT those questions.
I actually didn't. I thought about it. I was like, no, but this is my friend. I want to like actually get the best amount of value that I can from our amount of time. And so my confession is you're the first like interview that I'm doing. And so my questions are not going to be, I don't know. It'll be raw and real, I guess, is
Good,
what we'll say.
good.
Um, so before we get started, a little bit about you. You can tell us about who you are, what you do, where you're from, however you want to kind of jump in.
Um, I'm a Southern girl out in Georgia. I'm a wife and a mama to two beautiful little girls who are awesome and crazy and rambunctious. I have a business that I run, a service-based business. Been doing that for years, and it's a gift and it's hard and awesome all at the same time. I'm a content creator. I've really come to terms over the past few years that I'm a creator at my core. I tried being an entrepreneur for a long time because I thought that sounded cooler. But the more I got into it, the more I realized that I have a business so I can have time to make things because I really love creating. So I've really come to terms with that. And that's me. I'm kind of quirky. I'm type A through and through. And I eat way too much. I eat past when I'm full. I eat snacks. I'm trying to get
That's
together because your
crazy.
girl's about to hit 40 in like 3 years and I ain't got time for none of this.
Whoa.
Whew, Jesus.
What that means to me is that I'm going to be 40 like way, way sooner than you are.
I thought I was older than you.
Oh, Heather, we have this conversation every time we
I
talk.
get confused. You're older than me?
I am.
Hot dog.
Not by much, though.
Like,
So I'll be 38 this year in June.
okay, so we're 3 months apart. You're old. Gosh, how's it
Yep.
feel to be that old? Lord.
Be honest with you, it's a lot of like waking up like this. Ugh. No, man. I like one of the things I think is most challenging for me is like it seems like and man, I know that there's all kinds of like contributing factors to this, but like it seems like the older I get, the shorter my fuse is.
Oh, come on, I
Like
can preach.
like people walk past me, my kids walk past me and I'm like, "What are you doing?" And they're like, "Just going to get a snack." And I'm like, "Oh man, I shouldn't have said that."
It's because you realize you ain't got not much time left. Time's getting shorter, and you're like, listen, we ain't got time to waste. What are you doing?
No, seriously. Like it's not even like we're all gonna die soon, but like it's more of like I guess it's more like there's so much to do and I've been an autopilot for so long
Here we go.
that like
Mm.
I'm like there's always something to do. I got to do something. And I don't know if there's like a psychological term for this, but like I just have this it's not even FOMO, but it's like a version of FOMO where I'm like, I gotta keep getting stuff done, otherwise
Mm.
something is gonna fall apart.
Mm.
And so,
That's we're getting deep already because we could dive into that for a hot second. Like the illusion of
Right.
time and how we have so much more time than we actually think, but we're in this rabbit hole. And I'm the guiltiest of this, of like, time goes by super fast for us because we don't slow down. And ironically, when
Yeah.
you slow down, time expands.
Yeah. Which is crazy.
That's why
It's
kids think
crazy.
they have all the time in the world because they don't do anything. They're like, oh my gosh, this afternoon's dragging. It's because they don't got an agenda, so time is slow for them. Isn't that wild?
Right. It is. And I think like so and we've talked about this before, but like so for me right now the job that I'm doing is working with a company that is centered around like mentoring older foster kids. And so one of the things that I'm doing constantly is with my guys, I am showing them, okay, so life is going to work better when you have a schedule. You've got steps, you've got things that you've got to get done during the day. And like, you don't necessarily have to like check them off, but you do have to be aware of like how much time is going to where. Because if you don't, then before you know it, you'll be in a Takis induced coma while having a PlayStation remote sitting in your lap,
Yeah.
and before you know it, you're late for work, you didn't pay your rent, and your electricity is off. Um, and so I spend so much time like talking to my guys about kind of like forming their lives in a way that's going to set them up for success. Um, but then like for me, like there's times during my life like where things get so like out of control that I'm like, oh man, what am I gonna do? So I fix a fire here and I fix this and have a little bit of time of peace, and then I'm like, oh no, I'm missing something because there's peace. So then then I go to running around with different things, and in a lot of ways, like it affects some of the relationships that I have. Um, what do you think is like?
For
What would you
what?
say, just in general, like where people get their like foundation for what healthy relationship looks like?
I feel like the give and take, there's a neutral piece there where you're not just the one giving, you're also receiving something and vice versa. I think that's where it gets difficult slash interesting for driven type people who are, to what you just said, constantly pulling out fires, and the helpers of the world, people who are always that voice for others, like your job, TJ, what you do. It's interesting learning how to turn that off and receive and be vulnerable with people because you have to be so strong all the time. Um, at least that's what's been challenging for me. But I think what comes up for me when you say that is this equal giving and receiving. It's not I'm your mentor and whatever. It's we're both on the same page.
Yeah. One of the things that I think about is like what drives a lot of the ways that up until really about 5 years ago, uh, that I saw relationships, right? And I don't know if I've ever told you this or not, but um, like obviously we went through a span of time where we weren't talking as much, and we check in every so often, but like it definitely wasn't anywhere near the amount that we get a chance to chat now. Uh, and some of the different things that we began to talk about and like the way that our relationship has like flourished and I feel like has become more and more healthy, um, has made like a major impact as to how I do relationships and how much weight I put on myself,
Mm.
like to be able to communicate with people, but also like what I expect out of people.
Mm.
Um, and up until about 5 years ago, when, like I said, whenever we first started to reconnect, I the way that I kind of saw myself is like this person that always had to like be reaching out to people, and I didn't
Mm-hmm.
really have many relational boundaries outside of if I get too uncomfortable, then I'm out. But I feel like part of where that kind of came from was like what I saw like as I was growing up. So I'm the type of person that I what I'll do is I will like almost kind of mirror the relationship that I'm seeing. And it's not necessarily like for the purpose of health, but just like to dodge like being uncomfortable. And so whenever I was a kid, I would see people get really upset about people disagreeing with what they were saying. So instead of sharing what it is that I actually felt about things, I just wouldn't say anything at all.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, or like I would see like if people didn't keep in contact more than once every couple of weeks, then they would get upset and then they wouldn't be friends anymore. And so one of the habits that I formed was shooting text or calls like all the time because I'm like, well, there's got to be a connection because I don't want them to think that blah blah blah, and we don't really have anything to say, but I just want to keep some form of connection, and then like it formed a lot of like the arguments that I had, the sadness, the loneliness, and so I think for people in general, like what happens is they find themselves in spaces where they are mirroring what their experience is until like they like give um, almost kind of like a freedom to themselves to explore what relationships are actually supposed to be like. Um, and so in the relationships that you have seen, both healthy and unhealthy, like do you feel like you've seen any of that in your life, or like what's been your relationship with how you navigate through connections with people?
It's different when you get older because that time element is in your favor. When you're younger, you don't have family, you don't have, your job, you're at the Smoothie King, you know what I mean? From like 3 to 8, and you're off, you know what I mean? So it's interesting. Like, I remember, goodness, I'd kind of miss it. It was a lot of fun when you would just have your friends always around and constantly talking to them. And then when you get older, it's like you run your experience now parallel to that, and you think there's something wrong without realizing that there's nothing wrong with this beautiful stage that we're in. And one thing I really appreciate and I love about the friendships I have now, using you as an example, is we can go several weeks without talking, and then we'll talk for like, we voice note, like 2 hours in one day, and we won't hear from each other for a while. And it's not, that's just the rhythm of life now. I think when you can find folks who don't put so much pressure and expectation on how you should perform, you know, it's such a gift because there is a lot of pressure, you know? It's different for me now as I have way, 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 way less friends. And I don't talk to them all the time. But when I do talk to them, we immediately go there. And
Yeah,
they know I love them and vice versa. At least I hope that.
yeah. Would you say that you have more because, like you said, you have less friendships, but more, I guess, meaningful relationships. Like, would you say that the majority of the relationships that you have now are what you would consider to be healthy, or are there more healthy relationships that you can think of from back in the day?
That's an interesting question. I wouldn't say that one's healthier over the other. I think it's what I needed then versus what I needed now. What I needed back then
Mm,
is I needed community and laughing and goofing around and figuring out who I am and goofing off. I don't goof off as much right now. Maybe I should goof off more, but if I have free time, I'm wanting to spend time with my kids more or bring and take a
yeah,
nap. You know what I mean? Um,
yeah,
so it's not healthier versus unhealthy. I think deeper now for sure. I'm different. I'm a very weird gal. I mean, I don't enjoy a lot of small talk. I don't enjoy a lot of fiddle farting around. I love deep, deep, meaningful conversations. I want, to skip past whatever and go straight to the hardest stuff. And that's honestly exhausting and it gives a lot of energy. So I can't do that all the time. So it's nice to have things here. I don't think it's healthy versus unhealthy. It's just what do you need right now, And some people offend. I've had some people get offended with me because I either don't respond enough or I know one person was like, you never talk about, you know, she gave some examples of things that were kind of, I don't know how to explain it, everyday topics. But I'm like, I don't think in everyday. I don't, I'm not going to sit here and wrestle over which almond milk I should get. I'm literally going to grab one and whatever. I don't think about that kind of stuff. And so sometimes, especially, I don't know, I've had a lot of folks get upset with me about it, but also to have to realize that's okay that they're upset. I don't have to make them not upset. My only role is to be 100% Heather Parody. And if it's okay, it's okay. We're not friends. That doesn't mean they're bad people or I'm bad people. We're just different vibe.
Yeah.
I've never thought
So
about this stuff. Like, why aren't we? This is deep.
so would you say like that
It's
there
gray.
is would you say that there is such a thing as like a healthy and an unhealthy relationship? And if
Yes.
so, like how would you define those for you?
It's gotten unhealthy for me when I felt like I needed to perform for someone.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel fully seen.
Yeah.
And that gets interesting because also, I'm in therapy right now and I'm working through a lot of my issues and stuff. And I'm hyper aware that a lot of relational issues that I have are me, it's not other people. So it's been really interesting to try to figure out how do you have a boundary where you stay true to yourself and you're not changing to be accepted by other people,
Yeah.
but also make space to be better. And I haven't fully figured that out. That's why part of the reason why I'm in therapy and trying to work through some stuff. But there is also too this weird gut thing, this gut check where you're like, I don't feel like you see me. And I know that sounds weird, but
No, not at all.
you can just feel that.
Yeah. So like so for me, one of the things I am in some ways I can be high maintenance. Man, I even hate that phrase. In some ways I can expect more than might be reasonable, but like I feel like one of the things that I feel like makes me feel seen is just including me in whenever you're doing things. So it's kind of like I don't know if you've ever like been in a relationship with somebody, whether it's a boyfriend or even Brian, but like not that you expected whenever they went to the gas station, they picked themselves up a drink, uh, that they were gonna get it for you every time your favorite drink, but like whenever they do, it makes you feel seen. Like that's kind of how my relationships or like how I kind of gauge whether I feel like uh, there is some form of importance. Um, and so like whenever like it can be with anything, right?
Hmm.
Whether it is going to play basketball or running to the store or going on a trip or whatever it is, like when somebody, even if I can't go, and it sounds super goofy, but like even if I can't go, like I appreciate somebody saying, hey, I'm gonna go do this, would you like to come with me? Or I am going to be investing in this, wanted to get your thoughts on it. Or I am going to, you know what I'm saying, like something to where they're initiating the conversation, like it's just nice. Or I was looking at this TikTok, XYZ. So like do you have things in your life or like ways that you like to be seen, um, that make you feel most seen?
I think when something's a big deal for me, like I'm really excited about something, and that person genuinely gets that that's a big deal and they're happy for me. Um, I'm a very like ambitious person, and I'm starting to really love and accept and appreciate that about myself. And growing up, kind of in Southern Bible Belt as a woman and all this stuff, there's a lot of narrative around. Um, I, Sometimes I feel bad about being ambitious, and people kind of get weird about it. But then there's been these friends who are just like, dude, what you're working towards is awesome, and really validate that they understand my bigger vision and who I want to be in this world and what I want to create. That means a lot because a lot of people don't get that. So I think that like celebrating the wins, asking just general questions about like how's your show going, how's your dream or whatever, just a general interest in it. And I'm not upset or mad about people who don't do that because I think for the most part people just don't understand and get it. Brian and I were talking about this last night. He had something pretty big happen in his life that was awesome. I'm like, who'd you tell? And he said, just you. And I'm like, why don't you tell other people? He's like, because people don't really care. And he didn't mean it like in an emo way. He just meant it like they don't really understand his job and what that means. So if you say something to them, they're kind of like, oh, that's cool. But they have no idea because they're not in that industry what that really means. And again, it's nobody's fault. But
Yeah.
taking the time to understand what somebody does. So if you're at like an event or a party or whatever, like when you're like, hey, what do you do? And they're like, I'm a periodontist. And this just happened. Like didn't know what a periodontist was, but like
Me either.
digging into that and saying, what is a periodontist? Like, oh, it
Yeah.
deals with the gums, with teeth. Oh, well, that's interesting. What does that mean? People light up when you like show interest in what interests them, and it just you don't have to be interested in it, but you caring about their weird things is really really cool. Um, I don't know, but also when you were talking, I was thinking about love languages. It seems as though your love language is probably acts of service. Like you really like when people do things for you or whatever. I might be wrong on that, but I've had to realize that some folks, the way they give and receive love is different than the way I give and receive it. You know, I need words of affirmation a lot. I really thrive off of that. But I'm married to somebody who doesn't give words of affirmation. I'm married to somebody who does acts of service. And I used to get mad about that until I realized that's just the way it is, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, you said something that, this is a couple of seconds ago. You said something that really caught my attention. One of the things that I heard you say was that, people are, it's not necessarily relationships that are healthy versus unhealthy. It's more of what you're needing in the moment.
Yeah.
Um, and one of the things that I have really been concentrating a lot on here, like over the last few weeks, is like there have been some relationships that I've had expectations of people, that was according to what I understood, um, but I had it wrong, I guess. Yeah, like that's hard to say out loud, but like I had it wrong, uh, and the reason why I was wrong is because like people are at different stages in life, um,
Yes.
and sometimes those stages overlap, you
Yes.
know,
Yes.
and when they overlap, it's hard to be able to see that this person is responding in specific ways because of the place that they're
Right.
in, um, and but it's also kind of like dying to like the way that you have always seen things, the way that you have seen what looks like developed relationships. Like there's been different situations where I'm like, man, I really wish that I could do XYZ, or this person didn't show up for me in this way, or they said this, or whenever they said this to me, it was in this tone. And, one of the things that I've been trying to get better about is seeing past whatever somebody is saying to me. So like for me, what I feel like healthy relationships look like are that it's not just communication, because that's a super generic description of what healthy would be. But it's not just communication, but it's also being okay with the fact that, like, what somebody's
Yeah.
communicating to you may not be what they meant for right now. Maybe it's for a
Right.
future thing, or maybe like something that somebody is saying to you and it sounds super hateful. It's just out of a
Yep.
place of pain, or maybe the reason why somebody hasn't like shared with you like deeper parts of their heart is because they've been hurt 25 bazillion times. And even though you guys have been friends for
Yeah.
years, like they're just not at the place where they're willing to
Yep.
share it. There's this Instagram account that I follow, and you know how they, I mean, you've done some of these videos where like the person is kind of having a conversation with a different version of themselves, and it's this lady, and I forget what her name is, but she said something like she had this skit where she's like, somebody comes and asks if they can basically kind
Mm-hmm.
of dump on them, and she's like, the response is no, I just really don't have the mental energy for that today. Can we talk tomorrow? Is
Mm-hmm.
that okay? And the person's like, of course, like just because I need you right now didn't mean that you
Totally.
have to be the one that talks to me about it every single time. And like that's been one of the things that I've been trying to give more freedom to, like those who, some of the things that have helped me to bring closer to that point, like she did in the skit, is like our relationship, to where there are times where I'm really frustrated about certain things and I send you a text and you're like, hey, I can call or text you tomorrow. And I'm like, at the beginning, I was like, she's not really my friend. She won't even answer my texts, my calls, blah, blah, blah. And then I got to the point where I'm like, I am not the only, I'm not the center of her
Mm-hmm.
universe. And so if this is going to work, I have to be able to respect the boundaries
Yep.
that she's put for
Yep.
whatever reason. And then when she always shows
Yep.
up 100%. And so, do you feel like that there have been like moments that, like for you, where you have had to almost kind of like correct yourself in a similar way, or maybe a different relational part of your
Um,
life?
I'm odd. I'm kind of opposite of you, I think, where I've had to correct myself that friends just check on each other and just talk more than I probably want to talk. That sounds terrible, but I'm super opposite of
No.
you in the sense of like, although I probably am subconsciously through trauma issues, whatever, I've pushed that part of myself away where I'm not like actively seeking and desperate for like, I need a deep relationship and a deep friendship. I know I need it, but it has to be a very intentional thing for me to, um, plan a trip with a friend and go and do something just to hang out and invest in a relationship because I'm just wired differently. That's hard. So I've had to correct myself that it's good, healthy, okay to just be a human with somebody for the sake of having fun. I know that sounds weird
Yeah.
and I'm ashamed to admit it.
It
Yeah.
it doesn't. Like for me, I don't want what I just described to you. I don't want that with 98% of people.
Preaching. Oh, he's preaching.
You know what I mean?
Word.
Like I don't want to spill my guts to everybody in all of human
Yeah.
existence. But when you're like, when the amount of people, and it's gotten better over the years, but like when the amount of people that are willing to go deeper with you, or want to have meaningful conversations, or want to share at least one thing, is zero
Yeah.
in your vicinity, right, in the close proximity, then it almost like builds that. Because like, again, and I could tell some stories, and I'm sure you could tell some stories of my very aggressive pushing away of closeness,
Mm.
whether it's physical touching, whether it is hugs, whether it is, TJ, tell us about your life story. And I'm like, bro, that's none of your business, right?
Yeah.
But I think for me, like, there's different like impactful moments that I've had that have brought me to the place where I'm like, most people don't deserve my vulnerability.
Mm, mm.
Uh, most people don't deserve like what they expect for me to give to essentially what is a this may be kind of a hot take, but I think the majority of the relationships that people have are with complete strangers. And what I mean by that, just to kind of give a little deeper of an explanation, like even the people that we consider to be friends, in the grand scheme of the course of our life, they're really strangers because I don't really consider like the small talk that you know me.
Word, yeah.
Like if I was just to be like, "Oh, did you see that game?" And that's one of our things. "Oh, did you see that LSU Iowa game? Oh man, that was really cool. Hey, did you see how Caitlin Clark did this and Angel Reese did this and blah blah blah?" And like that's the extent of the conversation. I mean, we never go any deeper than that. I don't consider that to be like us actually getting to know each other. We just know that we both like women's basketball, or we just know that XYZ. Um, and I think that it takes a little bit deeper of effort to be able to kind of like what you were talking about earlier about how like it's something different whenever somebody asks you a little bit deeper of a question past whatever it is that you like. There's a video that I saw. I'm sorry, a podcast that I saw of yours, and it was talking about the guy was saying that people are boring whenever they just stop at that surface level question,
Yep.
um, but like things start to shift, and it opens up more opportunities when you start to ask more detailed
Yeah.
questions. And so I think that ways to be able to build deeper, more meaningful, or even better relationships uh, is just like you said, like taking the time to be able to focus in on what it is. And, you know, for part of it, I think one of the things that kind of makes like relationships kind of hard is just the way that all of the different demands of life, right? Because we have to eat, we have to have a house, we have to
Hmm.
build connections so that we have enough social capital to be able to um, live the life that we need
Yeah.
to. But at the same time, like we also have control over how much of that we give and how much we don't.
Yeah.
And it's important for us to be able to do things like going to counseling and trying to figure this thing out because it can be hard.
Yeah.
Um,
I want to
Go ahead.
mention one thing I'm working on. This comes from Esther Perel, who's a psychologist, but she talks about not putting a ton of different roles on one person and letting different people play different roles in our life. She was talking specifically about
That's
the
good.
marriage relationship, like you're my best friend and you're my lover and you're my this and you're
Yeah,
my that. And like that's a lot of pressure for one person. And then thinking about like that
yeah,
in friendships too, you know, I actually really enjoy having diverse friends. I have some friends who are, you know, one religion and one another religion. I have some that are like entrepreneurs and busting their butt all the time. I have others who like are yogis and talk about feminine energy and like I have so many different like kind of whatever. And it's been interesting to try to find the gift in each of those people and the unique relationship with it. And I know a lot of conflict has come in my personal life with folks either feeling like, or whatever, that I want them to be like me. You know what I mean? As opposed to
me
really
too.
understanding that I like and love them for who they are and I actually need that. So
Yeah,
I think a lot of ambitious people kind of have this issue with relationships where people A don't understand, but then B feel weak because this comes up in conversation a lot. Like, well, Heather, I don't do this and this. I don't get up early in the morning, do my morning routine like you do. Well, I don't have my own business, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't want you to. Like, I have zero interest in
yeah,
talking to somebody who's just like me. I want to talk to somebody who thinks differently than me and is going to challenge me. And my close relationships, like you and I have had deep conversations about God and and all that stuff. And we don't agree on a lot of stuff, but thank God for
Yeah.
that. Like, I don't want to just be friends with a parrot, you know? I want to be friends with people who can reflect different angles of what life is supposed to look like. So I don't know where all that came from, but I think celebrating diversity and being comfortable with, hey, your friends don't want you to be like them, they want you to be you.
Yeah. But see, I don't think that that's true in some instances. Like I think that
I'm done with you.
I think that there's many of people, and maybe not on purpose, but many of people that do want parrots.
I don't.
They do want they do want people that express themselves in the same way. They do want people that are only focused on their echo chamber. And I think that's part of what can become like I think that's what creates like extremist versions of
Oh, yeah, for
different
sure.
cultures, you know?
For sure.
So I know that we are running out of time, but there's a couple of questions that I wanted to ask you
Yep.
before I'll let you go. So the first question
It needs to be
is
easier because this has been making me sweat.
I'm sorry, I don't know how to
I'm
ask
just
I
joking.
don't know how
Just
to
go.
ask non-intrusive
Go. I'm
questions.
playing with you. Go.
Um so the first question is, can you think of like a pivotal moment or like an experience like within your family that has significantly influenced who you are today?
I remember going to my dad with all the things that I had done that I was ashamed of. And he was the most, still is, the most non judgmental person I've ever met in my entire life. Where I learned for the first time, you know, and it transfers across other relationships, just what like unconditional love really, really means. He's the type of person I can go to. Now, me and him disagree on a lot about like, we vote different, we believe a lot of different things. Um, he's super old and I'm super young. You can clip that out and send it to him. I'm just playing, but like, dad is somebody who I remember sitting underneath this apple tree. We had this old apple tree in our backyard, and I had done something that I knew mom was going to be upset about, and I was just crying and I was telling him, and he just had a way of like letting something land and us looking at it together and then separating the human from the act, which is really hard to do sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, and that's hard to find now in real life. You know, I mean, there's been times I've gone to people with things like confiding in them, and either they told other people or I had somebody. This is a stranger. This wasn't somebody I knew, but it was back in one of those little confession things. You know, churches like, you need to confess, and I just wouldn't confess to people, which isn't a good idea. I think you need to have a relationship when you confess, but
For sure.
like 18 years old and dramatic, but um, just really bad experiences with bearing my heart to people who didn't earn that spot in my life, you know. And I think you said it earlier, and it's really important. You need to earn vulnerability, you know. You can be vulnerable and not be vulnerable with everybody, right?
Yeah.
So my dad, I think, this one example.
Yeah. Um, so this next question is probably pretty quick, but who knows? Um, has our relationship ever gotten boring?
Why would you get me on a microphone and say, hey, goodness, wow. I love it though. That's awesome. Has our relationship ever got boring?
There's not a right or a wrong answer
I
to
don't
that.
think boring. I think there's been times where I felt like the conversation was repetitive and I've gotten frustrated, not at you, the human, but at the situation where I wanted to see you free. That's my answer.
Okay. Yeah,
Are you
yeah.
mad at me now? Don't be mad at me. I'm scared. Are in a
Absolutely
relationship
not.
over? Okay.
Heather, the conversations that we have had, and at times them getting heated, like out of all the conversations, that is the most gentle,
Wait, but see,
gentle
boring. Like,
response.
boring is a weird question. Like, the first time I met you, you were threatening to cut people if they hurt girls. Like, you're not a boring guy. I mean, usually when we talk about this stuff, it's pretty heavy. So, the only thing I could think of in relation to boring would be repetitive,
Yeah,
where, and it was a lot, I mean, a lot of it was a relationship stuff. We were talking a lot about that because I'm like, dude, you know, but not boring. Has it been boring for
gotcha.
you? Almost passed out.
No,
Actually, that felt good. You
of
know,
course.
breathing in deep is just something we don't do in our society enough.
Is it okay? One, two, three.
I got a headache now. I did it twice in a row. Doesn't it
I'm
hit?
actually
That
winded.
felt good, didn't it?
I'm actually winded. Um, so here's the last thing,
No, is
and
it
I'll let you
boring for
go.
you? Do you get bored?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, it's not ever been boring. So, uh, I guess I'm not blowing smoke, but like you have helped for some of the relationships that I have had to not be boring, like for it to be okay with like it being okay for me to not like be like, "Hey, did you see this page?" or "Hey, did you see
Mm.
XYZ?" Like because you have ignored so many of my memes, I'm not even offended. But it's only because of the work that you put in before.
Your memes? Like,
But like I am one, and this is probably one of my like annoying traits. I'm one of the those people that I will take like 5 or 10 minutes and scroll for that entire 5 or 10 minutes, and everything that I laugh at or I think is really good, then I just send it. And like for some people, they're like, "Oh, stop sending me stuff." I had one person that like they blocked me, and I messaged, I messaged them. I was like, "Hey, man, why'd you block me?" And they were like, "You keep sending me those dang memes, and I don't want to see them anymore." I'm like, "Why don't you just tell me?"
dang.
Anyway, so no, I am not. I have not ever been bored with our relationship. Okay, so last thing, um, like if you could give advice to somebody who is in a place in their life where they're trying to be better at relationships across the board, whether it's romantic or friendships or family. Like, what advice would you give to them about the first step to being better in showing up in relationships?
Get healed.
Mm,
The thing is always me. The issue is always me. Now, granted, there's been some stuff that's happened that has been wrong. People have done things, stuff like that, of course. But at the end of the day, no matter what, it's still my own healing, my own journey, my own cleaning out of my own heart, me being comfortable in my skin, me being okay with who I
yeah,
am. It always is that back to that. And that can be like a, oh my God, that can be like a really pressured thing, or it can be very empowering because it just means, oh my goodness, if I want life to be better, whether it's relationships or whatever, it all starts with our own healing, man. That's why I'm in therapy. That's why I do my morning stuff because I have to heal. There's still so much broken parts in my heart that I'm still uncovering and figuring out. And it's not about TJ, it's about Heather and getting better. So, and not everybody's supposed to be your
yeah,
friend, and that's okay. You can be friendly and
yeah,
love. I love so many people, but like you said, that doesn't mean you can't have the space for deep relationships with 5 million people. You can't, or
right,
something's gonna
right,
suffer.
yeah,
And to me, like my kids and family and all that, that's number one for me. And if I have, you know, less friends because of that, okay.
yeah, yep. Prioritizing is key. Prioritizing is key. Well, Heather, thank you so much for being on my podcast. Um, I'm sure that people got some value out of some of the things that you shared.
You're my longest
And
friend I've
yeah, I
ever
just
had.
really
Do you know
appreciate your
that?
friendship. You
You're
said
my
what?
longest friend I've ever had.
Really?
So thank you for that. Thanks for not giving up on me. Thanks for loving me. Thank you for sticking around and pushing in and knocking on the door and being a consistent voice in my life. I've needed that more than you will ever know. So I love you dearly, and Mandy, and just thank you for that.
You have no idea how hard it is to like let you finish that those sentences. Thank you. Thank you for coming.